Hello, and welcome back to another Doujinshi reading from White Album 2. Today we are reading Rainy Days and Mondays Part 2. So the first half of this book was a fan-written light novel between Haruki and Setsuna going back to that art museum, which, of course, Haruki had lied about and said, oh, let's just tell your parents we went here. They actually went there and had a good time this time, which was a really sweet story. Part 2 is a little bit shorter, but still very adorable. More like an afterward kind of story, I would say. So let's go ahead and continue with Part 2, Brilliant Love. Note, this short story is connected with the wall hanging from the official Aquaplus Setsuna Ogiso only set, distributed at Character 1 in May of this year. If you own it, feel free to have it on hand and look at it as you read. Now, the Setsuna Ogiso only set they're talking about is basically the wedding tapestry alongside the wedding keychain. That was the Setsuna set. And it is very pretty, and it's very quintessential if you're a Setsuna fan, so keep that image of Setsuna in her wedding dress in mind as we read this story. The antechamber of the ceremonial hall. After a quiet knock, I opened the door halfway to peek inside, and a small sound escaped me at the scene that met me. I had spotted at the back of the room the very person I had assumed I wouldn't find there. There you are, I muttered, low enough that it may or may not have been audible, walking over to get a look at her profile. After all the time and effort that had been put into it, our wedding had reached its final stage in what felt like a matter of minutes, and all that remained was for everyone to take a picture together. Suddenly realizing that the bride had vanished, the groom left everybody else behind to pursue her, making his way all the way back here. Everyone's waiting, Weddings. So beautiful. But when the bride suddenly disappears, and that bride happens to be Setsuna, that would be enough to make me very, very, very nervous, because she is known for getting cold feet. My words were meant to summon her back with me immediately, but they lost their destination at that moment, and couldn't find their way out through my voice. Because Setsuna, the woman with whom I had just made vows to share my future, was there alone, perfectly still, wrapped in her pure white wedding dress, a contented smile on her face. Oh, it's the same smile that's in the tapestry. Really is pretty. I mean, given the ceremony wasn't over, it was natural that the bride should be seen in her dress, and I'd first seen the dress when she was fitted for it, and having been with her all day today, I ought to have been fairly used to it by now. But for some reason, as she was right before my eyes, right now, I knew no words to express how she looked. You're not supposed to see the dress before the wedding? I mean, I know some people do. I know that's kind of an old-fashioned thing, but even then, no, it's supposed to be a cute surprise. The sight was so perfect, so exceptional, that I hesitated to speak, to add anything. It was as though God himself had flown down and drawn her with his own brush. And this is not backhanded. This is a not so subtle compliment to the artist who had drawn Setsuna in this tapestry. She may have surpassed every other Setsuna I had seen, even as I had first found her on the roof and realized how special she was to claim the top place. But at this moment, this very moment, I could not stop that smile. I mean, why would you? I had resolved myself to do everything I could to keep her this happy, to keep any melancholy from entering her face. After all, mere moments before, I had sworn to her in front of everyone, that I would do as much. So I took one more step forward and slowly began to speak. Setsuna. Yes? At last, she turned her face the tiniest bit toward me, showing a sign of noticing me as I stood at her side. Actually, it must have been earlier. She had probably noticed me the moment I entered the room, waiting for me to speak to her. Let's go. Everyone's waiting. Yes, everyone was waiting for the two of us. I mean, it is your marriage ceremony. That is kind of the point. With that image in my mind, I held my hand out to her. Yes. And she slowly rose to meet my words, setting her hand softly on mine. I could feel her warmth through her white satin glove. I swear to walk with you, to love you, to care for you, to devote myself only to you. With the pledge I had just spoken within my chest, I quietly resolved myself once more and gently grasped her hand. End. What a cute little story. And I love this because it's very short and sweet, and it's based off of that one image, right? The Setsuna tapestry. That's what it's based off of. And I think that's really cool. What if people did like a mini, I don't know what you call this, a ficlet? Like a mini fan fiction, a ficlet, for every piece of White Album 2 merch that came out. Okay, that'd be a little excessive, but you know what I mean? Like to just write a story behind whatever piece of whatever item it is. That would be a pretty cool idea. But this one specifically is very cool. So moving on to Rainy Days and Mondays, Part 3. Afterward. Good evening. Probably. To first-time readers, it's nice to meet you. To those of you who are returning, it's nice to see you again, and thank you as always. I'm Einshalt, the author of this book. Has done many, many White Album 2, specifically the light novel style doujins. Really cool. Thank you for picking up Rainy Days and Mondays. This is my 10th book about Setsuna from White Album 2. And the style and contents are more or less the usual, but I hope you enjoyed it. He really is a very, very dedicated Setsuna fan. Rainy Days and Mondays. The inspiration for this came from a key word that was tossed out in a scene from CC that probably caused a lot of stomach pain for Setsuna fans. The scene in question could well be a contender for first or second worst cause of stomach aches in the entire story. But with all of that, I imagined that after Setsuna's route in coda, or around the time of the mini after story, something like this could happen. It's true. I absolutely think this is very in character for Setsuna to bring him back to that art museum. Similar to the scene when Setsuna sends Haruki away in her route in coda, there's a scene that makes you think one misstep here would be tantamount to self-destruction. But now that I've decided it's what I should do, I can't keep myself from doing it. I.e., I wouldn't be able to forgive myself for not making this choice. It's unclear who was the first person to suggest it, but Coda also has mention at the outset of going to the Arumi Integral Hotel every year, as a sort of revenge for Christmas. So even if it seems like they're making a deliberate show of their problems, I feel like this is something they might do. Oh, absolutely. The fact that they insist on going back to that hotel because they had bad memories there is like, come on. I talked in the last chapter about, sometimes overwriting bad memories with good is a good thing to do, and I think that can be very therapeutic. But going back to a place where you've been, actually traumatized, like it was a really, really bad situation, personally, sometimes I think you should just ignore it. But Haruki and Setsuna just kind of want to bring up that guilt within themselves sometimes. It's this masochistic guilt that's it's not healthy, in my opinion. In addition, as usual, the content itself is not all that WA2-like, so please be understanding of that. This seems to be the case for all my short stories. Setting that aside, once I had decided on my material, I decided to take a train out to Hakone to do some location scouting. By car, I'd been to Hakone by the new road, the old road, and even the old Tokaido. But for someone who's just driving through, it's difficult to stop at hot springs districts, for example, or the art gallery that appears in this story, so I hadn't had the opportunity. From Kanto, it's within the scope of a day trip, so I hadn't really found any incentive to stay at an inn in that area either. Such dedication from some of these people. It's amazing. So I decided to go and see it for myself, but the season and weather were both different from the story, and there were a lot of foreign tourists there, so I'm not sure how successful it was as a location scouting trip. Sweats. I hope he at least went out for drinks and enjoyed himself. By the way, on my way back, I decided I might walk 1 station's worth of distance, which, to be fair, is not a lot. Usually, it's about 15 minutes. I guess in less populous areas, it could be up to a 20-30 minute walk, but even then. So, I walked down a mountain road, but midway it wound up going around the exterior of the art gallery, which was quite interesting. It's marked off by hedges, so you can't see inside, but the sculptures are right inside those hedges, and a lot of them stand relatively high. So from the perimeter, I just saw a row of sculptures from behind. Honestly, I feel a good bit like I'd wandered backstage. Lol. Actually, considering Shinjuku is concealed by a different name in the story, why is Hakone left as it is? Lol. Well, I figure there are a lot of circumstances at work there. This is very true. If you're going to change one city name, then why leave the station names in the smaller areas the same? But there's probably something in mind for it. And then moving on to Brilliant Love. That was the one with Setsuna and her wedding dress and Haruki right after the wedding. This is a very, very short story tied with the wall hanging from the Setsuna Ogiso Only set, sold at the Character 1 event held in May of this year. At that time, I honestly didn't have much in the way of expectations for new WA2 merch, especially Setsuna related. So, I was taken very much by surprise, but it was something official. So I decided to write something that expanded upon one of the illustrations. Thus, it is a story from Haruki's point of view, set on the day of their wedding. I thought, if I were to attach writing to that artwork, it would most likely be that kind of situation. Also, I picked a title I thought fit the content of the illustration, Brilliant Love, from my usual pool. I feel like it's a pretty tight fit as a title for the illustration itself as well, and personally, I'm quite happy with it. Lol. Lol is so funny. Lol just has such a different feel to it than the Japanese, kusaksa. I don't know. Lol. Always makes me smile. By the way, I don't suppose they might ever sell that wall hanging again. Dies. Saying that specifically because the Setsuna wall hanging is very expensive. Usually it goes for about 3 times the cost of the Kazusa wedding wall hanging. It was a little bit more exclusive. Finally, the cover illustration was once again done by Toya Ayase-san from Blue Garden. Thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to respond to my unreasonable request for Setsuna in Hakone with hydrangeas. Also, as always, I am grateful to the printers. I send in my manuscripts right on top of the deadline every single time. And every single time they handle it. Thank you so much. This space is for me to thank everyone collectively. And to everyone who has picked up this book, you have my gratitude. If you have any questions or reactions to share, I would love for you to send them my way on Twitter. And if you get the chance somewhere further on, I hope you will support my work again. Bye for now. Titles are taken from the song Rainy Days and Mondays, Carpenters, Carpenters, and the Japanese title of George Harrison by George Harrison, Gi no Kagayaki. So that brings us to the very end of this doujinshi, Rainy Days and Mondays. This was written by Einshalt, published August 13th, 2017, and you can find Einshalt's information below. So, thank you very much for joining me on the final part of this doujinshi reading from White Album 2, and I'll be back doing more readings in the future. Until then, hope you take care. See you!